What's up, world? This is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. I want to welcome you to another edition of Book Club with my partner, my friend, my brother, Tommy Dixon. Tommy, thank you for being here with me, sir.
Bro, how you doing?
Good, good. This morning, we're going to look at Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Aldous Huxley was an English writer and philosopher born July 26, 1894. He died in November 22nd, 1963. Huxley's got about 50 books in his bibliography, as well as numerous essays, narratives, journal and magazine articles, and some poems as well. Brave New World was published in 1932 and is probably his most famous and well known novel. Tommy, tell us a little bit about Brave New World.
Brave New World's considered uh, a satire, utopian satire set in the future, maybe 700-800 years from present day. In the beginning of the story, they're describing a setting where these people are working in this manufacturing facility where children are born. Not born in the traditional sense anymore. There are no live births. Everyone is created in a laboratory where their composition is closely controlled, um, and they're bred for a particular purpose. Their size, strength, intelligence, all that is specifically controlled in the process in the lab on an assembly line type of facility where they're created to fulfill certain roles in society, specific jobs. They have alphas, betas, gammas, so on like that, with the alphas being the not only the most intelligent, but the biggest, strongest people in the society. It kind of gives them a natural air of superiority, not only with intelligence, but their size. They automatically look down at the lower caste. And this is all to serve the agendas of the ruling order, and help provide stability in their current society. So after we get the setting there in the lab and find out how people are created, we follow a couple of interesting characters in the story. One in particular is guy Bernard. He's a social outcast. For one, because he's an alpha, but he looks different, which makes him feel different. He's treated a little bit differently because he's a slightly smaller guy than a lot of the other alphas. And because he feels different, he starts to think differently. And that's like a big no-no in their society. They want everybody just on the same page. They don't want individuality as far as that goes. And something about it just doesn't sit right with Bernard. So as the story goes on, Bernard and a friend of his, they take a trip to what they refer to as a savage reservation. You might think of it kind of like an older Indian reservation in the western part of the United States, something like that. They go there on a holiday where they encounter a woman who was originally from their more modern society, who has wound up there and given birth to a child and raised a boy who is now in his early 20s. So Bernard decides it'll be an interesting experience and almost an experiment to bring this boy, the savage they call him, back to the modern society, which he's had no this the boy, the savage, has had no experience with this whatsoever. And when they get back to the modern society, it's a big show. He's a big attraction, basically. Everybody wants a piece of the savage. And he starts to realize that the differences in the way he was brought up on the reservation with more what we would consider traditional values and ethics. He's been exposed to religion and family and those type of values, whereas those are all very taboo and considered barbaric concepts in the modern society. And eventually, the internal conflict that John is the name, the savage guy. His name is John. The internal conflict he's going through as he realizes how much different the way he lives, the way he has been brought up, and the way he thinks and the way he feels is so much different than the society that he's introduced to now, and which considers themselves to be superior to him. It pushes him towards a mental breakdown of some sort, and at that point, the story really starts rolling. I mean, it goes, you might say, kind of wild from there, and things don't necessarily happen the way you would expect them to up to that point. Uh, it's a really interesting read. In my opinion, it's a thought provoker, and I think that most good books are, but this one will really make you think. You can draw a lot of comparisons between this book and things that we see today in society. What do you think about that, bro?
Well, I think that's very interesting. I think you're right on point. And even today, we often try to use Huxley as some prophet in this book, and we forget that he's not talking to us. He's
Right,
talking to the folks in 1932, you know.
right.
And he really does deal with a lot of different issues and themes in this work. One of the biggest things that we kind of picked out is this idea of trading your liberty for stability in society, right?
Mhm.
And we kind of talked about this, and it being published in 1932. He is responding to the turmoil post World War One and really the ramping up of World War Two. And when you think about it, and the more I learn about it, the conflict in Russia and those kind of Eastern European states never really stopped. Um, so it's almost like he's making a comparison between what society will do to maintain control and stability, and then what the people end up giving up.
Good way to put it.
Um, so another big thing that we noticed, and he kind of uses to accentuate the differences in values, is sexuality, right?
Yeah, definitely. Monogamous relationships are a huge taboo in the modern society, and they've been programmed to believe that that's not in their best interest to just see one person on a sexual level. Everyone is for everyone. That was one of their big quotes,
Everybody
and
is everybody
it's
else's.
been
Yes.
yeah, it's been programmed into them from a very young age. They do a lot of sleep teaching. I can't remember the term exactly. Hypno.
I can't say it, so I'm
It's
not going to
it's
try.
quite a word, but they play these recordings to them from the time they're young children, because not only are they born in this lab, they are raised in the facility as well, so that their upbringing can be very controlled, and they can be programmed not just what to do as far as their job functions, but how to feel, how to think, what to believe.
Yeah, and this is one of those places where we can say Huxley is being prophetic, right? When we look at technology freeing us from our natural sexual consequences or
Mhm.
natural sexual institutes, maybe. Um, and so he uses that, and really through that freedom of sexuality, there is a bit of humanity lost. There is a bit of the individual lost in everybody being for everybody else. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, they've they've lost any concept of really caring for another individual on a higher level. That's not even a thought that enters their mind, and they don't want to have any of that alone time. Besides when they're in the bedroom, there's no other time where they really want to spend any one-on-one. There's no intimacy, I think is a good way to put it. And to
Yeah,
them,
and
it's not strange. They've been programmed to believe that that's the way it should be. If you were interested in a monogamous relationship, then you would be the outcast in that society, and they
yeah.
would really look down on you. They would want you to get help, get therapy for that, basically.
and they have some for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could spend a long time in that, and with the technology, there's the conversation of eugenics, there's the conversation of propaganda. There's just really a lot of stuff that's in this rather short novel.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing that we talked about as far as a big theme, or maybe just was a big thing for our conversation, was within our maybe larger philosophical discussion. And when I say philosophical discussion, I'm not meaning me and you sitting around saying, "Oh, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of this flower?" And not that those things are bad. That's part of it, certainly, right? But I'm talking about more formal of looking at the Greeks, looking at the Egyptians, looking at the Asians, and then bringing that up to our more enlightenment, age of reasoning type of thinking. And so
Right.
looking at this and we looked at Plato, right? And
Hmm.
there's just a lot of comparisons there. And being that, kind of failed to mention it earlier, but, Huxley was this elite intellectual. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he was from a family of what they referred to as England's intellectual aristocracy. Were his parents professors, and he had an uncle who was a famous scientist. And I may have the careers skewed a little bit there, but bottom line, they were all very intelligent people. He came from a family of very well educated people, and he was brought up that way and was very well educated himself. Did he graduate from Oxford? Maybe.
I think that's correct. And so what we were kind of thinking about that and looking at this comparison is there's no way he did this on accident, right?
Right.
And just a few brief things, we looked at Plato's utopian vision of a
Hmm.
republic and that class system that he set up, and it's not too dissimilar from the way things are set up in this future. Um, and then also there is kind of the allegory of the cave presented in this book. We didn't really go into a lot of detail, so we're not going to spend a lot of time of making those comparisons. But I definitely think it's worthwhile and something to look at when you're reading this book.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know we spent some time on it, and it was enlightening, I think is a good way to put it. It's impressive to me that there was a mind like Plato's as long ago as he lived that was coming up with these concepts and philosophies that are so relatable in the 1930s when this book was written, and even today just um, as much as society has changed, there's still, I guess, a big part of the human nature that remains the same. Maybe that's why it stays relatable.
Yeah. And you talk about how long ago Plato was, and I guess, 1,000 years earlier, the Near East and Eastern philosophers, I mean, we look at the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun. That's kind of what you just said, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. That's amazing. Some about the human experience in that for sure.
Hmm.
So, give us a review. Would you recommend this book? Did you feel like it was worth your time?
Definitely enjoyed it, and I think that for a person, I think anybody should read it. I think it's a good read, and you can be entertained by it just based on the face value. But there's a real higher value to it if you're willing to do some deep thinking, draw the comparisons between what they're discussing in the book and what we see going on today. There's a propaganda machine they refer to in the book several times. Look around you. I mean, that is something that we still see all the time. I mean, basically everywhere you look, in the media, the bottom line is that somebody is always feeding society all these different images and ideas through television and social media and radio or whatever the case may be. Uh, it's worth thinking about what is the purpose behind this.
Yes,
What is,
yes.
what is their agenda and sharing what they share.
Right. And, that's something we talked about how the intention or the agenda could be positive, and I
Yeah.
could agree with it, but it's still propaganda. And
Right.
and I need to at least recognize that
Hmm.
so I can make my individual.
Exactly. Make up your own mind. Don't just accept what's put out there.
Amen, man. That's it, man. That's awesome right there. And I think that might sum up what Huxley was trying to get at. So let's just leave that right there. So looking forward, I think we're planning on doing this again, aren't we?
Yeah,
Have you
definitely.
thought anything about what we might want to look at next? I know we've talked about it a little bit.
Man, I know we've suggested a few different authors as far as just between us. I think I'm kind of interested in the Upton Sinclair. I picked that up this past week.
The
Uh,
jungle.
the Jungle. Maybe I don't know how we hadn't really made any concrete plans on what to do next, but that's a suggestion, and I guess we'll debate that between us and decide where we go from here. But definitely something else coming up next.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what. I actually picked up a copy of The Jungle at the library. So it sounds like that might be the next book.
Okay, I
All
like
right,
it.
man. Well, I really appreciate your time. This has been Book Club with Tommy Dixon, Maxwell 3000. I am Maxwell 3000. This is Maxwell 3000 Productions. Peace and love.